Hello everyone, and welcome to Judy's Creations in Crochet. Today is June the 22nd, 2023, and I want to welcome all of you. I know there are quite a few new subscribers out there who joined me since I put out my Christmas in July fairies video earlier in the week. And that was a last minute decision. I didn't even know a week ago I was going to do it. And I just decided to give it a try. And so I am really happy to welcome a lot of new visitors to my channel. And I also say a big thank you to my regular subscribers who spend a little time with me each and every week. I am coming to you from Chatham, Ontario, which is in the southwestern tip of Ontario and Canada. And we are all about finished objects and showing yarn that I purchase, and the yarn that I show is hand-dyed yarn or luxury yarn, and anything to do with crochet and yarn is what I am all about here. And I just want to remind my regular followers that it's getting near the end of the month. We do a monthly Cowl here, and for those that are new, more information will come at the first of the month if you wish to join in with us, kind of late for June, but on July 1st, you will see what it's all about. So I'm just reminding those that are planning to send in a finished object for June. Today is the 22nd, Thursday, and your items, your pictures are due to me by next Wednesday, June the 28th. So don't forget to get your pictures to me, and you know the email address is in the description box below. For any of you that are new and want to know what it's all about, you can check out any of my past videos on the first of the month. January the 1st would be the best one to get the complete description. And the first of each month, I give a inspiration picture, which is the flower of the month. So today we are doing something a little bit special. I have only done this 3 times before. Today we are going to look at our 4th designer. Today I am featuring the designer Michele DuNaier. I will put that on the screen below so you can see the spelling of it. She has a fairly large collection of patterns in Ravelry. To my knowledge, that's pretty much the only place where she puts her patterns, although she has done patterns for other companies, say like Colby and that, and they would be in those locations as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to read what she has told me, and while I am giving you the information, as usual, I will split my screen, and on the other side of the screen, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, it just came out of nowhere, excuse me. I will split my screen and show some of her patterns. Try to show you a cross section of her patterns. She has a large number. Now, Ravelry, when you put in her name to search, shows, I don't know, 190 something, but she mentions that she has well over 200 patterns. So they're probably in other locations. Now, Michele says that in her former life, She worked in the computer field in software design, but now she lives with her husband on the edge of a forest on the north shore of Long Island, where they enjoy watching the seasons change and lots of woodland critters pass through their backyard. She mentioned being in software, W-A-R-E, I put the words here, and now she is in software, W-E-A-R, and she's changed. Okay, so to the questions I asked, and these are the standard questions. I didn't mention she has 2 grown daughters also that live in upstate New York, and I will mention her daughters again later. So I start by asking, when and how did you start crocheting? And I also ask if they knit as well, because I know I have knitters that watch here as well. She tells me that her grandmother was a very talented crocheter and knitter. So when she was very young, she used to watch in amazement at her effortlessly crocheting doilies and bedspreads and knitting sweaters, both for herself and her siblings. And she remembers that her grandmother taught her to crochet when she was about 7 years old. And so that was her first experience with crochet. And throughout her life, she's loved both crafts, but especially crocheting. But like all of us, we learn young, but as we grow up, we get very busy with other things and with life. And she too was busy with work and family and didn't get to spend as much time as she would have liked doing the crafts. So I asked her when and how did she get into designing. And it seems that back in about 2011 was when she says that after retiring, she joined a charity knitting and crocheting group, and she took on the challenge to make 100 hats in a year. That's quite ambitious. She complained to her sister, though, who was a fantastic knitter, that she was bored with the same old hat patterns, and her sister suggested that she should just make up her own designs, and that turned out to be a lot more fun for Michele than following someone else's pattern. She says she enjoyed the freedom of doing what she wanted instead of what someone else wanted her to do. So at about that point, she began self-publishing patterns on Ravelry. That's her favorite knitting and crochet website. And she says 11 years later, so I guess her first one might have been in 2012, she says she now has 280 patterns, and she has a wonderful Ravelry group. She has a Ravelry group called MAD, M-A-D, those are her initials, MADcap fans. And you'll notice a reference to that in many of her patterns. You should take a look at some of her patterns. So I always find it interesting to know what their favorite thing is to crochet. I stuck with crochet, her favorite thing to crochet, and her favorite thing to design. And she says, for crochet, it is definitely shawls, both for creating and designing. But she gave me the information on knitting. She says, knitting, I like to do hats and fingerless gloves. And I also like making and designing baby sweaters, both knit and crochet. And you'll notice as I move through some of her patterns, she has a great number of all of those items. Lots of baby things, lots of fingerless gloves and hats, as well as shawls. Of course, when you have 280 designs, you have a lot of everything. I asked where she got her inspiration for her designs. She says that, and I think where she lives has a bit of a bearing on this. She says she's inspired by nature and the changing seasons, because she mentioned that she loves to watch the changing seasons in the forest that is practically in their backyard. But she also gets inspiration from books and poetry and music and movies and television shows. And in some cases, she's also inspired to write her own pattern romance to accompany a design. That means she might write a short story or a poem or a few paragraphs about what the design means to her. Now, if you look at her pages, you will see in the description of a pattern, there might be a bit of dialogue or some other thing that goes along with her pattern. And the other thing I notice is she has a number of patterns that you might consider to be, I don't know my eras, but Victorian maybe in nature. They seem to reflect that. I also ask everyone, does the design determine the yarn that you use, or is it the yarn that determines what design or project or pattern she's going to work on? And again, she says, like almost everybody, that this varies. Sometimes she just follows along with the yarn, what the yarn tells her it wants. And other times she selects the yarn which she feels is appropriate for the design. And like all of us, sometimes the design does not work out as planned. And then, I like what she says, I like how she puts this, it doesn't work out, and then it's a trip to the frog pond. And I'm sure we've all been there more than once or twice. I find it interesting to know if they have a favorite weight of yarn, or if they have a favorite fiber or base they like to work with. And I also ask about favorite dyers, just for myself, so I can get to know more dyers and check them out. And I will check some of these out. Well, she says that it depends on the design what weight of yarn she likes to use. If she's crocheting shawls, then she prefers a fingering or possibly a DK weight in either a cotton blend or merino wool, depending on the season. But for making hats and fingerless gloves, of course, it would be DK for crochet and worsted for knitting. I would have thought even worsted for crochet myself. And she likes it to be a wool blend. For baby sweaters, she likes something soft and washable, like a cotton or bamboo blend in DK to worsted. Again, that depends on the design. She enjoys using yarns from companies such as Wools, W-O-O-L-E-S, Wools Yarn Creations. I have never heard of them. She also mentions Bittersweet Woolery. Again, I have not heard of them. And she also likes the very popular Madeline Tosh and Malabrigo, which I've shown you in the past. Other pieces of information she has included is that she feels that designing has been a wonderful creative outlet for her. After decades of working in software design, again, I'll put the word down below, typically creating something which was specified by someone else, I transitioned to software, and I'll put that on the screen, design, where she could stretch her wings and make her own decisions as to what she liked and what she thought was best. If I do not like something, no problem, just do something different, which is the freedom we have when we are following a craft rather than our careers. She says her daughters model her designs for her, and her husband helps with tech support. So it has become somewhat of a family affair. She also gets to do photography, marketing, social network, creative writing, and math as part of the design process, as well as creating a mountain of garments to give as gifts or to donate to those in need. I think we all find that we have many, many, many items that sometimes we're looking for someplace to go with them. She has, and I find that this is important, I want to pass this on. She has set a number of her designs as free to charity knitters and crocheters. Those designs on Ravelry actually specify in the pattern notes section that using the coupon code CHARITY in your shopping cart will give you the design for free. So a couple of examples are, if you're a knitter, those are the first two she's put here. White Mountain Slide and Eurus Hat. Those two are knitted, and if you use the word charity, they will become free. And she has some crochet ones. One is called her capital M-A-D, MADcap Team Cap. And she has day jackets, Shadmoor Crossings, baby crossings. The baby crossings and day jackets are two baby sweaters, you might call them. And then she has a cowl called Dulce de Leche. My pronunciation is very poor. She also has, and if I can figure out a way to put the link in my description box, she has 26 completely free crochet patterns on Ravelry. No coupon needed at all. She gave me a link to use, but it's a picture, a link in my email. I'm not sure how to get it into my description box, but I'll find a way. I think they are strictly free. I don't think it's like a lot of the designers that you have to go to their website, although maybe a couple of these you may have to go to her website or her blog. But I don't think she has a website. She, and one last bit of information for all of you, so you might want to make note of this. She also periodically holds sales on her patterns. So from now to the end of June, so you only have a week, but from now to the end of June this year, 2023, if you use the code birthday, I'll put that on the screen, I'll put it in the description box below, you can get 25% off of any of her patterns and ebooks. So you might want to take a trip to Ravelry in the next week. You have a little more than a week, don't you? Yes, it's the 22nd. You have 8 days. But in the next 8 days, if you get to her Ravelry page and check out her patterns, now is the time, if there's anything that you're interested in, to get 25% off. And as I said, I will put that in the description box below. Now, as a follow-up to this, I really like when I talk about a designer, I like to tell you my experience with, or show you, that might be a better word, to show you some items that I myself have made. So I'm happy to say I have 3 finished objects to show you today that I have made of hers, probably in the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I tried to do a little variety, but you know, I don't make baby things at all. I have no need for them, nobody to give them to. And I'm not really prone to making hats and fingerless gloves either. But I did make 3 different items that I do make. And the first one I made is a cowl. And this is a very unique cowl. I used a EFA Sparkle DK. I'll show you the remains of it in a minute. So this is a cowl that is made circular. It actually goes around, and it has, I think she was, I forget the name of it. Isn't that terrible? I didn't write down the name of it, but it has something to do with the sea because she was trying to do the sea waves around it. Now, I'm supposed to have a button on it because when you finish it, you attach the beginning circle here to make like a buttonhole. There's a buttonhole, and I can't do it on the mannequin. They aren't the proper size, so I'm going to have to put it on myself and put a buttonhole. I'm not sure how she meant it to go, but I think you get to do the way you like, so I'm going to put a buttonhole on it. Now, this was a very unique pattern in that you were going, started at this end, I'm pretty sure, and you were going forward and back, and making these like waves at the end of each row, and it got bigger as you went. The waves got longer, the circle got bigger, and then you circle back around to finish it off. So that's the cowl that I made, and I'm very sorry I did not put the names of these. And I used Sparkle DK from EFA, and I had from one ball, it is DK weight, I had this much left over. Now, I'm not too sure why, because I think it should have taken the majority of the ball. But the Sparkle DK balls are a little bit bigger. They are 275 yards, and I think it takes 220 something. So I had that much left over to go in my remnants. Then I do know the name of this next one. Another sparkle. Do you recall I showed you last week that this was my Advent, one of my Advent calendars from Christmas time? And I used, well, I intended to use 10. I had to use part of the 11th skein from this end of the board. This end still has the blues, teals, and greens. I'll use it at some point. So I used those, and I made a shawl. And this is called Bridesmaid Shawl. And here is the back. Once again, you know, my space is somewhat limited. But you get the idea of those colors, the pinks, purples, blue, the fade in those mini skeins. And here's the front. And I want you to make note that the front of this particular one has much more drape down the front. This pattern has more of a V rather than a straight line. I haven't blocked this yet. I only just finished it yesterday and I haven't had time to block it. But I'm going to put a picture here. I took a picture of it lying on the floor so you can see the middle kind of V's rather than most shawls go straight. This one doesn't. This one goes up like this. So it isn't quite as wide as some. It is very long and a bit narrow. But this is it. And I used 10 and a bit. So I have this much of the 11th one left. I'd say about half. So I'd say 10 and a half minis. And you know, a mini has usually about 87 yards in it. So 870 and maybe another 30 or 4. So just over 900 yards is what I used. Now, I will admit, you'd need more than that because I ended up leaving off the very last row in the border. I don't know why. I think I just got to a point where I was happy with how that looked and I was tired and running out of steam. I missed the instructions that you change hook when you get to the border, and I had the first 3 rows, which are the first 3 rows are chain, but it's a very long side, and I had the 3 rows done and missed it, so I had to tear them all back and redo the 3 rows of chain. So I was quite happy with that edge. The other row, to me, I didn't need it. So this will likely, yeah, I think it's nice and colorful. It's sparkly, of course, and it's not too heavy of a weight because it is made with fingering weight yarns. So that's the bridesmaid shawl. And finally, I made, and I knew the name of this and I have forgotten. Sorry, but these will all be in the description box below. Finally, I made an asymmetrical triangle. And of the 3, this was my favorite. And for several reasons. First of all, it starts at the point like most asymmetrical. And as it gets wider, it eventually, this is lacy, it eventually adds in a plain body. And as it gets wider, I'll never be able to show it all in one, gets wider and wider. The lace stays the same width and the body gets wider. And I used Oasis fingering. That's all this yarn in this cubby. I've talked about it before. And I had 2 skeins of it. Oasis fingering has 500 yards. And I used just a little bit more than 1. So maybe another 100 yards beyond 1. So 600, maybe a little more, 620 or 30 yards. But I love the solid with the lace at the edge. And what's different about this pattern is most will make a solid body, and then when they've made it as big as they want, they add lace to the bottom. And the lace is whatever width the bottom is. Well, this is my bottom here, and the lace goes up the side. And Oasis fingering, as you know, it's 50% camel and 50% silk. So when you block it, oh, does it stretch so you can really see the lace. But the one thing I would like is a bigger body. Now, she about halfway down starts going way out to make a big, big curve. And I didn't want the big curve. I just wanted to go straight. But this particular item feels like a dream. I don't know how anybody, when they felt this or put it on, wouldn't just fall in love with it. And it is so lightweight that it could be worn in the summer. Very, very lightweight. It puddles in your hand, and I think you can see the amount of drape in it. And I have decided that I'm going to make a couple more, and I'm going to experiment, and I'm going to try where it splits. It just has a couple of chains here to change from lace to plain, I'm going to right there in the chain change color and make this one color and this another color. And I'm going to try the first one to make the lace the plain blue and the body, the plain part of it, this multicolored. I love these together. And I'm also considering these, and I might do this reverse. I might make this the lace and this the body. Not sure. I'd also like to try it in pearlescent fingering, which is just a slight bit heavier than Oasis. But I like this and I like it a lot. So and it wasn't hard. It was a very straightforward pattern. I might put a wee bit less lace at the top and start the body of it up here more. But I just really enjoyed this, and I really want to experiment with different colors in it. It is gorgeous, and it really irritates me at the moment that I can't think of the name of it, but it will definitely be in the description box below. Okay, so that's the 3 items that I made of hers. Now, I want to make one small word of caution. I meant to bring a picture to show you. She thinks outside of the box. She does things a little differently. So, for example, in a shawl like this, I'm sure most of you have made a shawl, and when you get to the outside edge, you put in an extra double crochet or whatever the stitch is. If you're doing clusters, you put in an extra cluster to make it a little wider to grow. And she wanted hers to grow a little faster. I've done ones that grow faster, and they just put 2 or 3, maybe even 4 double crochets at the outside edge. She doesn't. She chains and then comes around and stitches into the chain to make it grow faster. So that's something she does a little different. This one took me a while. This cowl took me a bit to figure out what she was trying to tell me. Not that her patterns are hard, but they're different. So I would suggest that you don't want to be an absolute beginner trying some of her patterns. I mean, you can double check. Some of them may be very, very straightforward. I haven't tried them all, but just be prepared that some of her patterns are a little more difficult, and they take an advanced beginner to understand some of the instructions. That's my honest opinion and what I discovered in making these 3. In all 3 of them, there was something just a wee bit different to figure out. But she has some lovely patterns, so take advantage of her special before the end of the month. All right, so that's what all I have to say on that topic. Now, maybe I'm going to be a little longer than I should be, because there are 2 more things I want to talk about very quickly. I'm going to show you one acquisition, and this is the acquisition that you see every month when I get my subscription box from Arkansas Socks. So, first of all, I show you all of the little goodies I get. Once again, I got a stitch marker. I've taken it off the card, but there's the Arkansas stitch marker. There is tea. The theme this month is You Glow Girl. So there is it's sort of like, what do you call it, lobster claw with a charm on it, but you could take that off and make it a progress keeper. And it has fireflies in it to go with the glow theme. And then we have this little, it's a little light. See, the light comes on. And it could attach to your key ring. And we have one more stitch marker. And it has, I think, the dragonflies. And this is a like a clay piece with the dragonflies on it. And as well, we got some, I guess it's skincare. Smooth Affair Illuminating and Smooth Affair Brightening. One is a pearly finish, one's a dewy finish. I don't use that kind of stuff, but anyway, this came all along with it, as well as my yarn, which is what we're all waiting for. And here is, you know, there are two. They are sparkle, and here it is, You Glow Girl. And again, it's 75 merino, 15 nylon, and 10 stellina, and there are 437 yards. Now, I'll be honest with you, I love this end. The colors are gorgeous, but this end does not speak to me at all. I'm not into limey greens or neon greens or highlighter greens. So I'm reserved about whether I will use this or not. I'm sure if I stitch with it, it wouldn't show that much because it wouldn't be all together in one big blob. It would be mixed in. I've kept it in the package thinking that at some point, if I don't give it a try, it may become a gift, maybe a prize at some point. It's very pretty, it's very soft, it's very yummy. It's just my aversion to this color that's the problem. Nothing else wrong with it. It's wonderful yarn. But she's given us many in the past that look like this without this color on it that I will use. So this may be one I don't ever get to it. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll say stitch with it. Find out what it looks like and see what happens. Do a swatch. See if you see that much green in it. Anyway, so that's the only acquisition I'm going to show you this week. Probably next week, if all goes well, I'll have a fairly large acquisition from Hirschner's because I took advantage of their mill ends with all the gradient cakes, and I'll talk about that next week when they likely will arrive by the end of this week. And so I'll be able to show you what I got next week. So I have one more thing I want to talk about, and I very briefly mentioned this last week, and it seems like I got some positive response about the idea. Now, this was mentioned by one of my viewers when I was asking for ideas or suggestions, and the suggestion was that we have a cowl, not the kind of cowl we have now. Right now, you're all making your own thing in the colors that are inspired by the picture and submitting whatever you like. This suggestion was that we find something that we all make together. So we're all making the same item. Well, I got excited about it, and I decided I wanted to do it. I was a little worried it might be too much given that we have the monthly cowl. But, you know, I mean, I have 20 or so people submit items every month, which is wonderful. And some months I might get a few more. But that is only 20 of my viewers, and I have a couple hundred viewers every week. So I thought, well, maybe something else would appeal to some of you, the rest of you that don't want to have to worry about the colors that are in it or have it done in, you know, under a month because you're told on the 1st and you have to have it to me by the 28th. You get 4 weeks. So I thought, yeah, I think I would like to try a cowl where we're all doing the same thing. and I had all kinds of ideas of items to do. And I thought about, doing something that had different stitches so we would learn new stitches. And I've been all over the board on this as to what to do. And I finally settled on a pattern. And I'll explain why I settled on this. There is a pattern, and I'll show you because I've made it. There is a pattern called Just Feel Festive Shawl. This pattern is on Ravelry, and the pattern only costs $1. But in her Ravelry description write-up, there is a link to her blog, I think, where you can see the pattern and get it for free. If I'm wrong about that, I don't think I am. There is also a YouTube tutorial, and that's why I picked this. It is a very straightforward pattern. Even a practically brand new beginner to crochet, a novice, can do this pattern because it is like a granny square. It's a basic granny square, but it's not a square. It goes back and forth. And there is a tutorial done by Zelda, NRJ3, I believe is the website. And I will put a link below. I'll put a link to the pattern in Ravelry, and I'll put a link to the tutorial on YouTube. And this is a pattern that I think absolutely everybody can do. The other reason why I picked it is it was originally designed to be done with Advent minis. Now, I know you don't all have Advent minis, but some of you may have minis that you've gotten from different places. But when Zelda shows it, she did it with all her remnants, they call it in fabric, your leftovers, what extras you had in all of your projects. Now, the pattern itself calls for DK, or taking two fingering weights and putting them together to make like a DK weight. But this can be made in any weight you want. It can be made with a color changing cake, like say Lion Brand's mandala, however you say it. It can be made with a solid. It can be made with worsted. It can be made with DK as it was originally intended. It can be made with your leftovers. It could be made with a lighter weight than a DK. So I made this I would have shown it to you last fall. And I used, it's called Flowers Merino. And it really is a 4-weight. And it was a color changing cake. And I used 2 cakes. And I made it, it's the right width. It's the right width. And it's on the bias. But otherwise, it's just row upon row of granny squares. And because I was using 2 cakes, I made this thing way longer than it needs to be. Now, I think what I'm going to do is take out some at the end and use the yarn with something else. Because even folded in half, because it's on the bias, you will get the angle at both ends. It's on an angle, which I think adds a little more character than a plain square scarf. But even folded in half, it goes from the end of the one arm to way out here. It's long, way longer. But that's the beauty of this pattern. You could make it narrower if you want, but this is a nice width for a wrap, even a scarf, but you could make it narrower if you want. You can make it any length you want. You can use pretty much any yarn you want. You can use color changing cakes. You can use solids. You can take a bunch of solids and change the colors. You can use your scraps. For sure, this is a scrap project. I think what I'm going to do is dive into my mini skein stash, because I have a stash of mini skeins I've gotten from all over, and I'm either going to double them so they won't be very long, they'll change color frequently. I'm either going to double them to be a DK weight, or I'm going to use the one skein of the mini and get another solid color like white or gray or black or something neutral that's the same weight, and do one ply, I guess, one ply of the neutral that will go through the whole thing, and one ply of the minis. I haven't decided yet. I'm gonna go stash dive, and next week I'm going to give you the particulars about dates. I have dates in mind, but I haven't sat down with the calendar and counted out. I want to make it a 6-week project. I think most of you could do this in a couple of weeks. It is the mindless kind of thing you can do while sitting watching TV, or if you like to sit outside in the summer, or sit at the beach, or your kids or grandkids are in sports, you can go to their event and watch and carry this along. It is a very, very easy, straightforward pattern. It is only $1, or if you watch the tutorial to figure out the beginning, it's free. And like I said, using your scraps is a great way to use the scraps. And the one that Zelda did is really quite nice. And the pattern's by Kalisha Ryan. And I will link everything I have for it in the description box below. But I think it's a good way to start. I mean, there may be other things like learning new stitches that we can, if this goes well, I may try to do a cowl that we work together on something every year, or even twice a year. I'm doing this one in the summer thinking people, are sitting out and relaxing, and this is a relaxing item to do while they are. And they have a little more free time, that type of thing. They have vacation. But somebody suggested, well, everybody's on the go in the summer. It'd be better to do it in the winter. And maybe in January, we think about another one. I'm going to wait. We'll try this, see what you think, and get your feedback while we work on it. And it'll probably start mid to late July and end a week or so before Labor Day. So it's out of the way before all the fall things happen, about 6 weeks. So I'll give you specific dates, beginning and end, next week. So that's on the docket for next week. And also next week, you know what? It's the end of June. So it's time to do my second quarter review of my goals for the year. So, and I will have for sure a yarn acquisition to show you, which I know you'll be looking forward to, which reminds me, I had a lot of very, very positive comments about the yarn stash from EFA that I showed you last week. People really enjoyed seeing those yarns, and I'm really happy you liked watching that. So next week will be another yarn haul acquisition, not a big one like that, a smaller one. And like I said, my quarterly review. So I hope I'm going to see you all back here again next week. And until then, happy hooking.